Hey, welcome back to Miss Corliss's place. As our debut video, I'd like to present something that people have been talking about, and I'm not really sure they're aware of the actual content, but it involves the Willie Lynch letter. And I'm getting it from this authority. This is one of my collected newspapers, and it has the entire Willie Lynch letter in here. So over time, I'm going to start reading it to you so that you can be aware. You know how we get a little information and we run with it, but we don't really know what we're talking about? Okay, so this may take 2 or 3 videos. I'm not going to bore you with a lot, but it is a pretty long letter. And it speaks to things, excuse my glasses, you know I'm a senior citizen, I'm old and blind. How slaves were made, how to keep them being slaves, how they're remade, and it talks about let's make a slave. So today I'm going to just read that. I'm going to read an introduction to who wrote the letter, and then I'm going to read just that part about let's make a slave. Okay, are you ready? All right. So the infamous Willie Lynch letter was delivered by a white slave owner in 1712. And the message is still true today. It starts off with, "Gentlemen, I greet you here on the bank of the James River in the year of our Lord 1712. And the writer goes on to thank the gentlemen of the colony of Virginia for bringing this person there. And it goes on and says something like, I caught a whiff of a dead slave hanging from a tree a couple of miles back. You're not only losing valuable stock," he says, "by hangings, you are having uprisings. Slaves are running away, your crops are sometimes left unattended," and all of that goes on. So he goes on to describe this. He says he has foolproof methods to control your black slaves. I want you to pay attention now. It will control the slaves for at least 300 years, he says. He says, "I've outlined a number of differences among slaves, and I take these differences and make them bigger. I use fear, distrust, and envy for control purposes." Do we see that today? Yes, we do. Yes, we do. He goes on to say, I'll give you an outline of action, but before that, he says, "I shall assure you that distrust is stronger than trust, and envy is stronger than adulation, respect, or admiration." So you just keep this in the back of your mind. He says, "It's necessary that your slaves trust and depend on us." And he's speaking of the white slave owner. "They must love, respect, and trust only us." So now we're getting a little idea of what's going on here. So now we go into Let's Make a Slave, okay? By the Black Arcade Liberation Library. This is where this was kept. He says, "It was the interest and business of slave owners to study human nature and the slave nature in particular with a view to practical results, and many of them attained astonishing proficiency in this direction. They had to deal not with earth, wood, and stone, but with men, and by every regard they had for their own safety and prosperity, they needed to know the material on which they were to work." Let's make a slave. The origin and development of a social being called the slave. Who is that? We don't have to answer that, do we? It's a study of a scientific process of man breaking and slave making. All right. Cardinal principles for making a slave. For fear that our future generations may not understand the principles, it says, of breaking both of the beast together, the nigger and the horse. Nigger, Nigger, says specifically here. We lay down the following principles. So we're going to lay down these principles and let that marinate with you for a minute. For instance, it says, we lay down the following principles for long-range, comprehensive economic planning. Long-range, comprehensive economic planning. Number one, both horse and nigger are no good to the economy in the wild or natural state. Number two, both must be broken and tied together for orderly production. Slave, nigger, and horse. We know that's what we're talking about. Three, for orderly futures, Futures, special and particular attention must be paid to the female and the youngest offspring. Listen now, this is important. Both must be crossbred to produce a variety and division of labor. Okay? Number five, both must be taught to respond to a peculiar new language. Number six, psychological and physical instruction of containment must be created for both. Finally, the letter goes on to say, we hold the 6 cardinal principles as truth to be self-evident based on the following: the discourse concerning the economics of breaking and tying the horse and nigger together, all inclusive of the 6 principles previously laid out above. Okay? Neither principles alone will suffice for good economics. All principles must be employed for an orderly, good nation. What does that tell you? We were cattle. Of course you knew that. I hope you knew that. And they had a way of breaking us like they break a horse. And it continues today. I've been witness to some political activity where we are still distrusting each other. We are still putting all of our faith and trust in the oppressor. When does it stop? Now, the younger people, I don't think are going for the program at all. It's us older people. I'm 70, and it's my age group, older and some younger, based on how we were exposed to the whole idea. If we didn't have a chance to have some information given to us to let us see what's happening, then we're right along with whatever Willie Lynch says. So I'm not going to hold you long today. I just want to give you about 10 minutes, and then we'll come back and talk about other aspects of the Willie Lynch letter, because it's quite a long letter. And it has different categories, glasses again. The breaking process of the African woman. Possible interloping negatives. The Negro marriage unit. These are things that were spoken about. Controlled language. These are things that were spoken about in terms of slaveholders controlling and managing their product, which was slaves, which was us. So it's a study. It's a study that they made on maintaining slavery. If you ever get a chance, you ought to look it up. Now, my source, I'm sure someone would want to know my source. My source comes from this paper that I got, I think in the 70s. This paper was published by our brother's keeper. It was volume 1, number 1, see the infamous Willie Lynch, under Revolutionary Times. This particular paper was done in 1995. Think about that. Discuss those 5, 6 principles I gave you. And we'll come back and talk about this later. But welcome to Corliss's place, Miss Corliss's place. This is the kind of stuff we're going to be talking about. Because we need to find a way to dispel the youth and decentralize the control that the enemy has on us so that we can advance and stop fighting each other and uplifting each other to make progress. As long as we are kept in a certain vacuum and we distrust each other more than other people, it's all by design. It's all by design. Anyway, thank you for joining me today at Miss Corliss's place. I'll talk to you later. Bye.